Hi, beloveds. Welcome to our website of fleshandspirit.org. We are a community of men who love men, and the key part of our journey is called the ecstatic path. So whether it's the work that we're doing with men who love men, or the work that we've also adopted in what's called the Missing Thread Mystery School, both of those, the underpinnings of it is the ecstatic path. So this video is just a taster of what underpins, whether we're doing anything from a themed potluck to our massage trainings, our ecstatic massage, or doing our Reiki trainings and energy medicine trainings. Doing all the work that we do comes out of a framework. And so I want to tell you a few stories and kind of the roadmap a little bit of what this ecstatic path is and how you might be called to it, whether if you're a gay queer man identified in flesh and spirit, or whether you're a person of any gender, any orientation that works with us as well in the missing thread, because both of those have this underpinning of the ecstatic path. What's that mean? So, I love, the mystic Rumi for me is kind of one of my major draws in being able to kind of contemplate and listen to spirit through his poetry. And it's always inspired me. And Rumi talks about ecstasy a lot. And so ecstasy for Rumi, though, is not kind of what many of us, we think of, just blissful moments or passionate moments in our lives. And yes, ecstasy is definitely that. Or we think of sex and intimacy. And yes, ecstasy is definitely captured oftentimes in that. But what is ecstasy? It's actually the expression and the experience embodied in every cell of our bodies. And it's being able to hold all of the experiences, all the feelings. Rumi talks about the guest house and how really all parts of us are welcomed into the guest house. Well, where's the guest house? Who's the guest house? Right here. So your body never lies. In here, in this body, is the juiciness of all the awakening, all the remembering of who you are, and all the ways in which you can come home to this body in a way that it takes an embodied experience. A lot of spiritualities or psychologies or ideologies that are floating around these days, and there are a lot, and they all have some aspect of truth or wisdom in them. But if it's not an embodied experience, then it's really just kind of a lens that we're holding up here, but actually, how do we experience the world? Through our whole body. So getting ourselves into welcoming all the feelings, emotions, sensations, pleasures, harms, desires, wounds, and transforming all of that into the ecstasy that Rumi talks about. So on this ecstatic path, which is a path of freedom, path of healing, a path of, again, waking up to who you are and remembering who you are and what your purpose is on the planet. So if you're a queer man, a gay man, or a person of any gender or orientation, waking up in these times, they're really juicy times. An ecstatic path is the journey. So the journey I want to tell you about just a tiny bit. So in our work, again, no matter what we're teaching or what the gathering is, what the ritual is about, is always the underpinning of these six, what I call six callings on the ecstatic path. So the first calling is the peaceful warrior. And in Buddhism, in ancient Buddhism especially, you will find this archetype of the peaceful warrior. And the peaceful warrior is what? One who knows oneself, one who faces one's fears. So in this ecstatic path that we're on, especially as queer men together and building community, knowing who we are is essential. Remembering who we are is essential. And we've been suppressed, repressed, held down, squelched, and the world's trying to do it over again. Even though many of us have, risen above all of that, there's still layers in which we still have encoded in our bodies kind of a slavery mentality, a slavery humanity of us being second-class citizens or other than, rather than seeing as tribal people always have seen, that every person in the tribe has a gift. And every person in the tribe is necessary. So it's true of all tribes, the queer tribe, that we bring to the larger world healing, first and foremost for ourselves, for our own wounds to transform, but also for us to wake up and give that back in service. So the peaceful warrior starts our journey. It's kind of the foundation. My beloved Donnie behind the camera at the moment is master at teaching the tarot. The tarot is really the journey of the peaceful warrior. It's about that journey that Joseph Campbell talked about, the hero's journey, for all of us to walk through. And what are we doing? We're remembering who we are. We're gathering all the parts of ourselves. So the peaceful warrior is the foundation for us to take this journey together. The second archetype we play with is called the lover. And the lover is kind of all the things that you conjure up probably immediately. But the lover in each one of these archetypes, so the peaceful warrior, it's really about coming into your power and your compassion. The lover, though, is about being available to intimacy, the intimacy that the indigenous people understood and understand throughout the ages, of how we're interconnected with all of life. And so that lover is a lover of the earth, lover of our ancestors, as well as the lovers that we have physically, that we touch and care for in all the many ways that we may find in integrity with ourselves and our partners to be in. So the lover is all about being available to intimacy while what? So each one of these archetypes, what's the peaceful warrior do? Peaceful warrior, to get into their power and compassion, has to drop the fear or neutralize the fear, transform the fear. The lover has to what? To be available to intimacy, has to open up to that intimacy by dropping a shield. And what's that shield? That shield that crosses the heart, that protects the heart, is grief. So many of us have lost so many things in our personal journeys, in our relational journeys as queer people, and just people in life and what's going on in our world right now. So learning how to play with our grief, so that our grief, like Rumi talks about, becomes the window or the crack for the light to come through, for the healing to come through. So opening up to our passions as lovers to each other and the ancestors in the earth is primary and necessary. Then in this kind of revelation, and I forgot to even tell you that all of this stuff came out of a time when I was just going into graduate school, and I was learning all this amazing stuff, kind of psychosomatic stuff, and behavioral medicine stuff, holistic health stuff. as a psychotherapist. So I'm drinking in all this stuff, and AIDS comes along and kind of stirs up the crucible of making all the rubber meet the road, like who's surviving and who's thriving and how and what makes it so. So in living in those questions, Spirit kind of gave me a download of these 6 callings, or these 6 archetypes. So the peaceful warrior, the lover, and now the sacred prostitute. The sacred prostitute, and yeah, it's a juicy one. Those 2 words, sacred and prostitute, and how do they even fit together? Well, we've got 2,000, 3,000 years of a kind of patriarchal stuff and colonialism and things that have repressed, suppressed purity kind of theologies that have grown up and are being flashed around all the time these days. But the sacred prostitute were the healers. And how were they healers? They were healers in the temple where someone would come to them in pain, emotional, physical, spiritual, wounded in war, wounded psychically, and they would come to the sacred prostitute for healing, to be touched, to be anointed, to have herbs being given to them, to be made love to oftentimes. So that awakening of healing came through the transmission of their bodies in union together. So the sacred prostitute, especially for us queer folk, is one to what? Drop and neutralize shame. And in that neutralizing the shame or integrating all the parts of ourselves, we wake up to, oh, these bodies are not only sacred, but they are to be of service. During the AIDS years especially, I saw how so many people around the world, whether they were queer or straight, were waking up to how can we be of service to each other. So we're touching each other in ways in a time where we were told not to touch, or that it was bad to touch, or it was lethal to touch, dropping and transforming all that shame into service, embodied service. So, perfect example for me is I met Mother Teresa years before she died, and what an incredible person. I'm sure the last thing she would ever label herself was a sacred prostitute, but indeed her care for AIDS children at the end, her care for the sick and the dying in Calcutta, and picking them up, holding them, washing them, bathing them, much like St. Francis did with the lepers. We have a tradition in our community of understanding the truth of what the sacred prostitute is as a healer, a touch healer, a sound healer, a vibrational healer, an herbalist healer, healers that bring in service through their bodies the channels that open up the possibility for healing. So archetype number 3 was the sacred prostitute, dropping shame, being of service through your body especially. And then comes what? The integration, kind of those first 3, is the elder. So the elder, that term too, loaded, all of these terms are kind of loaded and packaged so much these days in definitions that probably really didn't fit with how people who originated them might have thought. So we're ever in a defining and a redefining moment. So the elder is one who's what? In mature love. And so the elder is kind of like a combination of peaceful warrior, lover, sacred prostitute, all together. You put it together and it equals mature love. So the mature love and the taking our place in community. So you can't really be an elder. One time somebody came to see me and wanted to do an elder workshop that we were doing. And the man didn't want to tell his age. He didn't want to tell all kinds of things about him. And yet he wanted to do this work. And I said, well, I really appreciate, but this maybe not be the starting place, because the elder is actually one who's kind of gone through, I'm faced my fears. I want to be open to intimacy, and I want my body to be in service. And he couldn't get there. He was really early in his coming out process, even though he was quite an older man. And so the elder, what is the elder? It's mature love, but it's taking our place in community. Again, like Indigenous people really understand and ground me all the time. I think about one of my teachers briefly, just for, was Melodoma Somé, and some of the traditions and the wisdom of the Dagara tribe, and how the Dagara have in it elders, but they have also these groups of folks called gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers basically are queer men. They're men who love men, and they go into their caves and they touch each other, they call upon the ancestors, and they do their rituals, but they're embodied, so they get into ecstatic states. So what happens in an ecstatic state is, you're an open channel to both receive and to give in a clear fashion. So the elder is actually mature love. The gatekeepers in the Dagara tribe, the wisdom of Somé, you brought that home for me, how important that each of us take our place in community, which means we need to do our own work and figure out who are you? Who am I? And how do I fit? What are my gifts and services? And just begin to just fall into love with yourself, and fall into how you can love the community and watch the awakening start to unfold. So, mature love, taking your place in community. What's the shadow side of the elder? And the shadow side, and especially I think as queer folk, we have internalized this in our own unique ways, but of not belonging. So the work that we have to do inside to remind this body and to clear and detoxify is that we don't belong. When indeed, just kind of like I heard Harry Hay one time talk about Thomas Huxley, the biologist, and how the biologist Thomas Huxley would say, indeed, anything in any species that replicates itself over and over and over and over again throughout the millennia is essential to the planet's survival and healing. So we, as queer folk, we're necessary. We need to take our place in community and be leaders and a voice of healing with the orchestra of all other groups and tribes to bring the healing that I think our planet is so eagerly trying to wake us all up to. Takes us to the next archetype. You know, what's all this all about? For me, it's about feeling the oneness. The oneness, even with, the folks that, the peaceful warrior is dealing with conflict heartfully. So, we live in a time of juicy conflicts, and it's real easy for me not to be in my heart and to kind of have to come back to, how can I be in my heart and actually face this conflict so that I can move through it and come back to the truth that'll set us all free, which is ultimately we're all one. We're all one with the planet, we're all one with the universe, we're all one with all humankind and all species. So the sooner I learn how to see and feel and know and recognize the oneness and the sacredness of all things, the sooner I'm going to move into that oneness for myself, where all parts of me are welcome. And so the juicy part of, we do ecstatic massages all the time and our work. So, one of the things that happens is, we're having our whole body touched and our erotic energy is open and we're doing full belly breathing and and then opening up to something that's greater in that experience, just like the Dagara do in the gatekeepers, that opening up to the oneness. So the mystic understood that, and the mystic understands the oneness, but what keeps us separate from the oneness is oftentimes the mystic bumps into his, her, their own fear of foolishness, appearance of foolishness. Well, there's a lot of stuff out there that I could, judge and say looks foolish to me, but I have to point back to myself and go, wow, the mystics were really oftentimes called fools. In the tarot deck, we have the Fool, which is kind of the beginning of the journey, ready to jump off the cliff and take the new expression and find his, her, their way. And so the Fool is really important, and being able to reclaim, oh, I may appear foolish, and anything I say or do may actually, I don't need to be attached to it. I need to free myself and just express it. That's my job, not to prove it, not to make it so for anybody else's experience, but simply to give and deliver that message. So the fear of foolishness. And then finally, the last calling in this journey that we apply to all of our work, kind of underpinning, is the prophet or the prophetess. And the prophetess or the prophet is offering your unique message, your unique truth of love. I loved one of my mentors, again, was Don Clark, and well, he's still around. I think he's like 95 at this point, as a point of this video. So I love you, Don Clark, if you happen to see this. But Don Clark's words were always, what's your gay truth? So his message for us was to go inside and kind of, what's your experience? And to speak that truth, because no one knows what's true or truth for you but you. You have to do that work inside and allow that to be expressed through your loving outside. So the prophet or prophetess is all the time, giving out some message, that message of change, message of hope. I mean, think of Harvey Milk and how Harvey would, told us over and over again, give them hope, give them hope, give them hope. What's the prophet or prophetess, and what do we need, or what are we eager to long for in these days? It's just fragments of hope, to reignite the hope within us, to get through these times and find the harmony that I think we're all craving, but in so much conflict about. So what's the shadow side of the prophet or prophetess? The shadow side is the need to be right. And so if I'm clinging to, oh, I've got a truth, the truth, which lots of theologies or people who even call themselves atheists or people who are in science, if you can have people kind of clinging to truth and their truth as the truth for all people. And for us, I think it's about not needing to be right, but actually to deliver the message, the facts, the wisdom. In these days, hearing facts is oftentimes prophetic. Because there's something to lock on to find some commonality with each other. So it could be something as simple as speaking your truth in love and bringing out facts, or it could be something that feels even more kind of inspirational, like Harvey, of give them hope. You know, if I can give you a vision, Martin Luther King gave us a vision, you know, James Broughton gave us a vision of how we could all be in this ecstatic world of change and hold things, as Rumi talked about, in ecstasy, where everything is marinated, as one of my teachers used to say, in love. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who I got to work with right before the end of her life, talked about marinating ourselves, marinating little infants in love. We all need to be marinated in love these days. And the peaceful warrior, the lover, the sacred prostitute, the elder, the mystic, and the prophet or prophetess, each one of those callings is part of a roadmap of healing, of freedom, and purpose to help us what? Remember who we are, come home to our bodies, and to awakening. So this is just a taster. If you want to learn more about all of this, stay tuned to what we're doing in Flesh and Spirit. Namaste.